This is the taillight panel for the Sport Fury GT. It's an anodised aluminium piece that goes over or around the taillights on the back of the rear bumper. The GT is blacked out. I'm not sure if the Sport Fury is blacked out, but the GT definitely. You've got to isolate impression on the aluminium panel to make it obviously two colours. It's quite fiddly, so I've virtually untaped it, but this is basically the last piece of untaping. So if you can see, you put a line of fine line tape down first, and that gives you the sharp edge, and then you use the regular masking tape to isolate it. So you can see by pulling that off, you get your reel end to drag it back on itself, so that it cuts nicely. And that's what happens when you don't. See that little join there? That's because I wasn't watching what I was doing. So pulling it back on itself, you get a nice sharp line. Let's go around the corner. And then you've got to pull the back masking off. There we go. So because I didn't tear it back on itself, I've got a little jagged edge there now, which I'm going to have to trim with the blade. Put my eyes on. It should come off because I did isolate it. It's just that the paper slipped out from under it. So basically just run the blade through the edge there, and that should come off. Just tear up my nail. There we go, end up with a nice sharp line, and that's what you're wanting. Now, as well as that, I've kept this for a separate job. So this lettering back in the day would have been screen printed in some way. I don't know how they would have done it, but some obviously mechanical way that was fast. I couldn't think of any easy way to isolate that from paint. Certainly couldn't do it with fine line tape, and I just don't even know how you really go about it. So I etch primered this first, then I painted the satin black on it second. So now I'm just going to use a regular old blade, and that's what I've just done here, and just carefully just scrape the paint off, watching every stroke you do, and recover the bright aluminium behind it. So hopefully I'll end up with something that looks half decent when I've finished. It's quite fiddly, and you've got to take your time because you don't want to scratch the background. If you're careful, you should be able to get a nice neat result. I mean, that doesn't look too bad. I'm really got to do a bit more around there. Anyway, so an hour of scratching away with the blade. Wearing my wife's glasses. I'll show you the end result. If the reflection's alright, I'm not sure. It's the only way I could think to come up with lettering like that standing out. I can't see another way to do it. So now we're painting up the grille for the GT, and putting cars back together, it's all about little details, and I'm pretty fanatical about little tiny details, and one of them is painting this grille correctly. It might look simple, but there's a bit more to it than you think. There's a tiny bright little silver line that runs around the outside of the black, and I've seen so many times where people don't quite get it painted correctly, but when you do get it right, it looks fantastic. So it's a base coat clear coat silver on the outside, sat in the middle, and there's a tiny little silver line around the perimeter of the black, and it looks really good. So I'm really looking forward to putting that in the car with a nice chrome bumper. Very, very sexy front. And also preparing the taillight panel, which you saw me getting ready for painting, and now there's the rear valance and the chrome bumper. So I've got to start assembling that off the car. That's going to look great. Getting to the tail end of the bodywork on the GT. It's been sitting while I've been away overseas, hardening up nicely, so the high fill has been on there for 3 or 4 months now, so it'll be nice and hard. That'll give you less chance of any shrinkage later. So I actually do the final sanding mostly with a DA, and then I'll finish wet rubbing the whole car down probably with a 600 grit when I'm finished. But I get the bulk of the sanding done on the hoist, as you can, I'll turn around and show you. So this is really the best way to do it. If you've got the luxury of having a hoist, lift the car up as high as you need it, so that you're working at eye level, even right down to the lowest point, so you know that you're not going to miss anything, and you just do a much better job when it's up high. When you try and do it, I know a lot of people haven't got a hoist, and it's just hard. You've got to lay down on your side or have a creeper to lay on, or and you tend to not to see flaws and imperfections down low. And actually, when the car's finished, you don't usually see those flaws if they are there, but you do notice it when they come back on a tow truck. Hopefully it doesn't happen too often. Or if you got up on a hoist. And I always look at a car on a hoist and up high, and you can tell how much work someone's gone to the bodywork. If you see it up high and it looks just as nice down the bottom half as the top, they've gone to a bit of trouble. Pretty hard to tell how straight it is. I'm just hoping that I've done a good enough job. So yeah, it's already looking pretty shiny, so it'll come up nice off the spray gun, I know that. But very hard car to get perfectly straight. I mean, really, to get it, I don't know how straight they were originally. They were pretty good, but I think in this day and age you'd probably have to skin the whole car from one end to the other, and then sort of try and board sand the whole thing, just to get it perfectly straight. But I think it's going to look fine. So it's getting exciting. I've done a bit of the restoration work on some of the parts in between jobs. So there's the tail end that I've now restored, and the front valance is restored and painted, and also the grills are restored and all the badges detailed. Yeah, so the good thing is once the car's painted and polished, I can just really put it back together quickly. So nearly 12 months since I started, and finally got some, mind you, it hasn't all just been body though, of course. It's doing everything from start to finish, but it's been nearly a year since I started, so it's a long time, but really it's not really one person building a car, but getting in paint is always exciting. So this is straight off the gun, not being polished, and really happy with it. It's looking really good. It's beautiful and straight. A little bit of dust in it, what you'd expect. Nothing to worry about. And you can see that inside. That'll even sharpen up even more once I give that a light rub and a polish. That'll come up absolutely beautiful. So I'm just going to pull some of the masking tape off. My little wifey's hiding around the corner there. He doesn't want to be seen on... I can see your bum's hanging out. Anyway, exciting. So yeah, the fun part starts once it... Obviously there's still a bit of hard work to do. It needs to be wet rubbed and cut and polished. That's always hard work. But I can tell just by looking at it, it's got a really nice flat finish on it right now. It just needs sharpening up with the light cut, take a little bit of dust out, and then the real fun begins in, because I love the assembly side of it. So putting the chrome back on and putting the strobe stripe on and all the wheel lip mouldings, and yeah, and the new vinyl top, of course. This is a Gator Grain car, so got a brand new green vinyl top to go on it in the Gator Grain. That'll be exciting. Your next stage. Of course, the main reason for all this paperwork down to the floor is to prevent overspray going in under the car and all, because this car's detailed in the engine bay, and under the car's been stone guarded and fresh exhaust and muffler and pipe and stuff, so you don't want green overspray everywhere. So take a bit of extra time to mask it off to the floor, and then you get a nice result without any overspray everywhere. So it's worth the extra time. Yeah, taken off all the tape, door jams, boot jams, under the hood all the jams, so there's no overspray. I like to take it off early rather than leave it later, and it just comes off nicer now. But I'm leaving the plastic over the roof because there's no front and back windows, so when I wet rub and cut and polish the bonnet and boot, I won't get cutters flinging inside the car all over the place. So looks better even already, you know, seeing it just with the tape off it. And of course, as you put every individual piece on, it just gets better and better, you know, because you see all the car come to life, you know, because they're like quite plain without all the mouldings and things on there. So the fun part will be coming soon. So now the fun but also hard work begins after all the rest of the hard work. Once you've finally got the car in shiny paint, then you've got to rub the whole car down again so you can polish it. So it never ends. Doing body and paint is a really time intensive, really hard work. There's no easy part of polish and paint and body work really, start to finish. So anyway, so I showed you a picture of the car off the gun. Now we'll have a look at it the next stage. So that's the side of the car off the gun. And this is what you have to do if you want to get a nice finish or a nice flat finish. This is basically the boot lid and a Dutchman panel sanded down to about a $1,500 finish. You can go further, 3,000, but I generally do the cars when the paint's off, the next couple of days after it's painted, and they tend to cut easier. Well, they definitely cut easier. The negative is usually in a month's time, once all the solvents have come out of the paint, then you really need to polish them again. But by a month's time, you've assembled the whole car, put chrome on, you know, you've had total assembly, and quite often it gets dirty in that process a bit anyway. So I like to give them a final cut and polish in about a month's time, and that just sharpens it up completely. And you can see what I don't know if you can see it on camera, what you're chasing. So when your machine, basically, I don't care how good your spray booth is, I've said this before, obviously I didn't paint this in a spray booth, I painted it in my workshop, but even in a spray booth you still get an element, there's always a small element of dust that gets into the paintwork, and when this basically polishing, sanding processes to get that out. So I'm not sure if you can pick this up in the light, but you can see, I don't know if you can see a little dot there, a little dot there, tiny little specks of dust that you've got to sand the top of them off, make it flat, so when you finish polishing it, looks flawless. I've already done the bonnet. I did this yesterday, the bonnet and the tops of the front guards. So hopefully you can tell the difference. So it's looking pretty sharp. And that had, you know, an element of dust through it, which is typical, like I said, painting, you always get a little bit of dust. The better you mask the car, the less dust you tend to get in, because it comes usually out of holes and surfaces around the car, and then often it comes off you. So the better you mask it, the better result you get. And that's looking pretty good. So I'll do a bit of machine polishing. I might show you a little bit of that if you want on the camera. You can see what I'm up to. I know it seems like a shame having to sand down the paint after you finally get it shiny, after being, well, ever since I bought the car it was shabby, and then 12 months of basically building the car and the car looking shabby, and then you finally get a nice shiny coat of paint on it and you go sand all the shine off it. It feels sometimes like you're going backwards, but it's totally necessary if you want to get a nice finish. So I'll just do a little area here so you can see what's involved. So that's about 1500, that's the finish on the paper. Like I said, you can go up to 3000 if you want to spend more time, but I find if I do the car pretty quickly, like I said, within a couple of days the paint's quite soft. So we'll give it a quick polish with the cutters. Too much, not too little. And do like about a quarter like first. That's just one pass over, and although this will look beautiful, it really won't be good enough, because body and paint is all about reflection. Even though that looks nice and shiny, I can tell looking on the angle where I can see the reflection of the light above. There's a tiny little amount of still sandpaper markings. Super fine. And outside you never see it, but under light it shows everything. So that will need to be cut again. So I do the whole surface once, and I go back over and I do it a second time, sometimes a third time, depending on how deep the scratches are. Sometimes you get deeper scratches than others. Anyway, you can see it's coming up. So now we've been over it a couple of times, and this is just cut only. This actually would need a good machine polish, but as I said, because of the time frame doing the polishing so early, it's going to need to be recut again probably in a month's time. So I'm happy with just getting a real good flat finish, and then later on I'll machine cut it again and then machine polish it, and I'll just bring it up just that little bit sharper. Not that you can probably tell the difference now if you can see that reflection. Probably hard to pick up on the camera, but looks really nice. Yeah, so all I've done now so far is the bonnet and the boot. Now I've got the sides to do. It's a big car. It's like doing two cars. So I don't know if you can see the reflection on the side of the car. You can just tell that it hasn't got that sharp, clean shine, even though the finish is reasonable off the gun. It needs to be sanded and polished, so they always look better after they've been rubbed and cut. So once again I'm back on the hoist, and I raise and lower the car accordingly. So have it up nice and high to do down the bottom body line, right down the very bottom of the quarter panel, so that you can get it nice and shiny. You can see exactly what you're doing. So I have wet sanded this up to 1500 grit from front to back, and now I'm looking at reflection. As I've said before, it's all about reflection, but that looks fantastic. It's such a big car, but when they're done right, they look so good. So it looks like I've finished both sides now. That was fast. I wish it was that fast to do in person. And also, as you cut the sides, you flick cutters everywhere else, and then you've got to clean the surfaces you've just polished, and you just go around and around in circles for ages. And as you walk around the car, you notice things that you might have missed. There'd be tiny little patches that's a bit dull, or there's a sand line not scratched there or somewhere. and you're constantly going back and finding things all the time, and the more you walk around the more you find, and then eventually you get to the point where you can't see any imperfections, and then you can just stand back and enjoy the reflection. And I love the colour, what a beautiful looking colour, and it look even better outside. So you can tell why people would have bought these cars back in the day, you know, when they look like this, when they're new and shiny and straight and the colour's vibrant. It'd be very hard to resist if you ask me. That might just be me, I'm not sure.